The empty watch box told me everything. It sat on the dresser exactly where I had left it, polished wood, perfect edges, untouched from the outside. But inside, nothing. For a second, I just stood there, staring at it, waiting for my mind to catch up with what my eyes already knew. Because that watch did not disappear. It could not. Not without someone taking it. And there was only one person who had access to that room. My brother. I picked up the box slowly, turning it in my hands like the weight of it might explain something. But it did not. It only confirmed what was missing. $120,000. Gone. That was not just a watch. It was something I had worked years to afford. Something I did not even wear often. It stayed locked away, protected, untouched unless I needed it. And now, it was gone. I pulled out my phone immediately, dialing him without hesitation. The line rang once, then twice, then finally connected. His voice came through loud. Not casual. Not relaxed. Loud. Music in the background. People talking. Glasses clinking. A party. My grip tightened. I asked him where he was. He laughed. Not nervous. Not confused. Amused. He said I should have come. Said it was one of the best nights he had ever put together. That word hit harder than anything else. Put together. I asked him again where he was. He gave me the location without hesitation, like there was nothing to hide. Like this was normal. Like everything was fine. Then he said something that made everything stop. He mentioned the watch. Casually. Like it was part of the conversation. Said it looked better in motion than sitting in a box. My chest tightened instantly. Because that was not just a comment. That was confirmation. I did not say anything for a second. I did not need to. He kept talking. Said people were impressed. Said it got attention. Said it was worth it just to see the reactions. Worth it. That word settled in slowly. Because it meant something specific. He believed he had the right. The right to take it. The right to use it. The right to decide what it was worth. Without asking. Without telling me. I ended the call without another word. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Because this was not a misunderstanding. This was a decision he made. And now I knew exactly where to go. I grabbed my keys, stepping out without hesitation, my mind already moving ahead, calculating, connecting, planning. Because this was not about the watch anymore. Not just the money. Not just the loss. It was about what he thought he could get away with. And that kind of thinking does not stop on its own. It gets corrected. The location he sent was not far. But by the time I got there, everything was already louder than it should have been. Lights. Music. People spilling out onto the street. And inside, somewhere in that chaos, was my watch. Being worn. Shown. Celebrated. Like it belonged there. Like it belonged to him. I stepped toward the entrance slowly, taking in every detail, every face, every movement. Because the moment I walked in, everything was going to change. And he had no idea how much it was going to cost him. The bass hit before I reached the door. Heavy. Constant. The kind that shakes the ground and blurs everything into motion. Lights flashed across the entrance, bodies moving in and out, laughter spilling into the street like nothing could go wrong inside. But something already had. I stepped through the doorway without stopping, letting the noise swallow me whole. The air smelled like expensive liquor and bad decisions. People brushed past without noticing, too caught up in the night to see anything else. That worked in my favor. Because I was not here to be seen. Not yet. I moved deeper into the crowd, scanning faces, ignoring the chaos, focusing on one thing only. Him. It did not take long. My brother stood near the center, exactly where attention naturally gathered. Surrounded by people, drinks in hand, confidence effortless. He was laughing, telling a story, reliving something that clearly made him feel important. And on his wrist, there it was. The watch. My watch. The lights caught it at just the right angle, reflecting across the room, drawing eyes every time he moved his hand. People noticed. Of course they did. Something like that does not stay invisible. And he knew it. That was the part that mattered. He was not hiding it. He was showing it. My jaw tightened slightly as I watched, staying just outside the circle around him. Every detail settled in. The way he lifted his arm just a little higher than necessary. The way he angled it during conversation. Intentional. Every movement calculated to be seen. That meant one thing. He had already made this public. Which meant what came next would be just as visible. I stepped forward slowly, closing the distance without rushing it. A few people moved aside, not because they recognized me, but because of the way I carried myself. Focused. Direct. I reached the edge of the group just as his laughter peaked again. Someone next to him pointed at the watch, clearly impressed, asking something I could not fully hear over the music. My brother answered easily. Too easily. He said it was his. No hesitation. No pause. Just ownership. That was the moment everything locked into place. Because now it was not just about taking something. It was about claiming it. In front of witnesses. In front of people who would remember. I stepped fully into the circle. Close enough now that he could see me. At first, he did not. He was too caught up in the attention. But then his eyes shifted. And landed on me. The change was immediate. Small. But real. His smile held for a second longer than it should have. Then tightened. Not fear. Not yet. But recognition. Because he knew why I was there. The conversation around him slowed, like people sensed something shifting without understanding what. The music still played, but the moment between us cut through it clean. I looked at the watch. Then at him. No words. Not yet. Because sometimes silence forces more truth than anything spoken. He lifted his wrist slightly, like he was about to say something, to explain, to control the situation before it changed. But he was already too late. Because this was not a private mistake anymore. This was public. And so was what came next. The circle around us tightened. Not physically, but in attention. People felt it now. The shift. The tension that did not match the music or the mood. Conversations faded just enough for the moment to take center focus. My brother tried to recover first. He let out a short laugh, lighter this time, forcing the energy back into something casual. He said I finally made it, like this was planned, like my presence fit into his version of the night. It did not. I did not respond to that. I kept my eyes on the watch, then slowly raised them back to him. That was enough. Because he understood. The confidence he had earlier did not disappear, but it adjusted. Sharper now. More aware. He shifted his stance slightly, positioning himself like he was preparing for something. Control. That was what he was trying to hold. Someone next to him asked if everything was good, sensing just enough tension to be curious. My brother answered before I could speak, saying everything was fine, just family. Family. That word landed differently in that moment. Because it was being used as a shield. Not a truth. I took a small step forward, closing the space between us completely now. The watch was clearer. Closer. Every detail visible. Unmistakable. I spoke for the first time. Calm. Direct. I said it did not belong to him. No raised voice. No scene. Just fact. The reaction around us was immediate. Subtle but sharp. People looked at him, then at me, then back at the watch, trying to piece together what they were hearing without interrupting it. My brother did not respond right away. He smiled again, but this time it was tighter, controlled, like he was choosing his next move carefully. He said I was overreacting. Said it was just for the night. Said he planned to return it. Planned. That word did not help him. It made it worse. Because it confirmed everything. I nodded slightly, like I had expected that answer. Then I asked one question. Simple. Direct. Where is the receipt? That shifted everything. Because that was not a question he could talk around. Ownership is easy to claim. Proof is not. The silence that followed felt heavier than the music itself. My brother's eyes flickered for a second, just long enough to show he was recalculating. He said it was not that serious. Tried to laugh again. Tried to pull the moment back into something casual. But the room had already moved past that. Now they were watching. Waiting. And he knew it. I reached into my pocket slowly, pulling out my phone. The movement drew every eye again, the same way his watch had earlier. attention, but controlled. I unlocked it, tapping once, then turning the screen slightly so he could see. Not everyone else. Just him. At first, he did not react. Then his expression changed. Completely. Because what he saw was not something he expected me to have. Not here. Not now. His posture shifted instantly. Confidence replaced by something else. Something sharper. Something closer to concern. I locked the screen again without showing it to anyone else. Not yet. Because timing matters. And this moment was just the beginning. The real shift had not even happened yet. But he felt it. And for the first time that night, he was no longer enjoying the attention. He was trying to survive it. His eyes stayed on my phone for a second longer than necessary. That hesitation said everything. Because whatever confidence he had built through the night was now cracking under something he could not control. He tried to recover quickly, shifting his weight, lifting his chin slightly, like posture alone could bring the moment back in his favor. It did not. Someone in the group asked what was going on. Another voice followed, curious, sharper now. The attention had fully turned. My brother forced a smile again, but it did not reach his eyes this time. He said it was nothing, just a misunderstanding, something small being blown out of proportion. Small. That word landed wrong. Because nothing about this was small anymore. I stepped back slightly, creating space, not retreating but positioning. The circle widened instinctively, giving the moment room to unfold. Then I spoke again. I said I had already checked the last transaction tied to that watch. That was the first shift. Because now this was not about possession. It was about movement. My brother's jaw tightened slightly. He did not interrupt. He could not. I continued, calm, steady, letting every word land without force. I said the watch was not just taken. It was sold. That hit hard. The reaction around us was immediate, sharper than before. Confusion spread across faces, eyes moving quickly between us, trying to understand how something that valuable could change hands so easily. My brother stepped forward instantly, shaking his head, trying to cut it off before it settled. He said that was not true. Said I did not know what I was talking about. Too fast. Too defensive. That made it worse. I raised my phone again, this time not just for him. I turned the screen outward, just enough for the closest people to see. A transaction record. Clear. Timestamped. Value listed. 6 figures. Gone. The room shifted again. But this time, it was not curiosity. It was realization. Because now the story changed completely. This was not borrowing. Not temporary. Not harmless. This was a sale. My brother's expression broke for a split second, the kind of crack that cannot be hidden once it happens. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, telling me to stop, telling me we could handle this later. Later. That word again. The same strategy. Delay. Contain. Hide. But this was already too far. I shook my head once, then added the twist he did not see coming. I said the buyer was already here. That froze him completely. Because he did not expect that. Not in this room. Not in front of these people. A silence dropped over the circle, heavier than anything before it. People started looking around instinctively, trying to identify who it could be, who had paid that kind of money, who was connected to something this big. My brother's breathing changed slightly. Faster. Shallow. He glanced around quickly, not out of curiosity, but out of fear. Because now, he did not know who knew. Or how much. I kept my focus steady, letting the moment stretch just enough for the pressure to build. Because this was no longer about proving anything. It was about revealing everything. And the person who bought that watch was about to step forward. Whether my brother was ready or not. The silence stretched across the room like a held breath. Every head turned, scanning faces, searching for a reaction, a signal, anything that would reveal who it was. The music kept playing, but no one was listening anymore. My brother stood still. Completely still. Because now the situation had moved beyond his control. He was not just dealing with me anymore. He was dealing with whoever held that watch. And that changed everything. A few seconds passed. Then movement. From the edge of the room, Not rushed. Not hesitant. Deliberate. A man stepped forward, calm, composed, cutting through the crowd without needing attention to make space. People shifted instinctively, creating a path, sensing the importance of the moment even before understanding it. My brother saw him, and the reaction was immediate. Not recognition. Realization. Because he knew exactly who it was. The buyer. The man stopped just outside the circle, his gaze steady, his presence quiet but undeniable. He did not speak right away. He did not need to. The room had already connected the pieces. My brother tried to recover again, stepping forward slightly, forcing a version of confidence back into his posture. He said this was unnecessary, that things could be handled privately, that there was no reason to turn this into something public. Public. That word felt almost ironic now, because he was the one who made it public the moment he wore that watch here. The buyer finally spoke. Calm. Measured. He said he had purchased something earlier that evening. Legally. Documented. Paid in full. His eyes shifted to my brother's wrist, then back to him, and asked one simple question. Where is it? That question landed heavier than anything else so far, because it removed all room for explanation. My brother hesitated. Again. And that hesitation was no longer subtle. It was visible to everyone. He lifted his wrist slightly, like he was about to speak, to justify, to explain, to shift the narrative one last time. But nothing came out, because there was nothing left to say. The truth had already settled. I stepped slightly to the side, giving both of them full visibility in the room. This was no longer my moment. It was theirs. The buyer extended his hand slowly. Not aggressive. Not demanding. Just expecting. Because legally, that watch was his. My brother looked around one more time, searching for something that was no longer there. Support. Distraction. Escape. Nothing. Only eyes. Watching. Waiting. Judging. His hand moved slowly toward the clasp, every movement heavier than the last. And in that moment, the same attention he had chased all night became the reason he could not move freely anymore. Because now, every second of it was working against him. His fingers hovered over the clasp. For a second, it looked like he might refuse. His jaw tightened, shoulders stiff, eyes flicking between me and the buyer as if he could still find a way out of this. But there was no angle left. Too many witnesses. Too much clarity. Slowly, he unclasped the watch. The movement felt heavier than anything that had happened all night. The same wrist he had been raising proudly now looked exposed, empty, like something had been stripped away in front of everyone. He held the watch for a moment longer than necessary, then placed it in the buyer's hand. No words. Just a transfer. Clean. Final. The buyer examined it briefly, nodding once, then stepped back without drama. No confrontation. No escalation. Just confirmation. And that made it worse. Because there was no fight to hide behind. Only consequence. My brother exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair, trying to recover what little control he had left. He turned toward me quickly, voice low, tense, asking what I wanted. That question revealed everything. He still thought this was negotiable. That there was something I was aiming for. Something he could offer. I shook my head once. This was never about getting something from him. It was about taking back what he assumed he could take. Then I said something that shifted the room again. I told him the money from the sale had already been traced. That landed instantly. Because now this was not just about the watch. It was about what he did with it. His expression tightened, more visibly this time. He tried to respond, to push back, to question how I would even know that. But he stopped halfway. Because he realized. I would not say it if I did not. I explained calmly that large transactions do not disappear. Not when they move through accounts tied to names, locations, timestamps. Not when someone is paying attention. And I had been. That was the difference between us. He reacted. I prepared. The room leaned in again, the tension shifting from spectacle to something more serious. People were no longer just watching a scene. They were watching consequences unfold. My brother's breathing changed again, quicker now, less controlled. He asked what that meant, trying to keep his voice steady but failing to hide the edge. I told him it meant the party he threw tonight was paid for with something that was not his. And that trail does not just stop at a receipt. It continues. That realization hit him harder than anything before. Because now this extended beyond the room, beyond tonight, into something permanent, something recorded, something that could not be undone by walking away. I stepped back slightly, giving space again, not pressing, not raising my voice. Because at this point, the pressure was doing all the work. And he was finally starting to feel it. Not as embarrassment, not as a moment, but as something real. Something that would follow him long after the music stopped. And for the first time, he understood. This was not ending here. The music felt distant now. Still playing. Still loud. But disconnected from what was happening in the center of the room. Because this was no longer a party. It was a turning point. My brother stood there, shoulders tight, eyes shifting, trying to calculate his next move. The energy around him had changed completely. The same people who had been cheering him on were now silent, watching carefully, measuring every reaction. He tried to regain control again. Took a breath. Straightened slightly. Said it was just money. Said he could fix it. That word again. Fix. Like everything could be adjusted with enough confidence. Enough speed. But this was not something he could smooth over. Not this time. I let him speak. Let him offer explanations that did not land the way he expected. Because now the room was not listening for excuses. They were listening for truth. And truth does not hide behind tone. I stepped forward just enough to bring the focus back, not aggressively, just precisely. Then I said something simple. That fixing something starts with understanding what was broken. That line shifted the room again. Because it forced clarity. He had not just taken a watch. He had crossed a line. And lines have consequences. My brother's expression hardened slightly, frustration starting to surface. He said I was overcomplicating things, that family should handle matters privately, that this did not need to go any further. Family. Again. But now it sounded different. Weaker. Like a last attempt to pull the situation back into something he could control. I shook my head once. Then added the final layer. I told him the transaction was already flagged. That the amount, the timing, the account, all of it had triggered attention. That was the moment everything shifted completely. Because now this was not just between us. Not just in this room. It was bigger. My brother went still. Completely still. His eyes locked onto mine, searching for any sign that I was exaggerating, bluffing, pushing too far. There was none. Because I was not. The associate near the back stepped closer again, their tone quieter now, more serious, asking what kind of attention. That question mattered. Because it brought the situation into focus for everyone else. I answered calmly. I said when large amounts move quickly, especially tied to high-value items, it raises questions. And questions lead to review. The room absorbed that. Not as drama. As reality. My brother exhaled slowly, his posture dropping just slightly, the weight of it finally settling in. He looked around again, but this time there was no searching. Only realization. Because he understood now. This was not something he could walk away from. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not easily. I stepped back one last time, letting the space settle, letting him stand in the full view of what he had created. Because this was never about humiliating him. It was about showing him something he had ignored. That actions have layers. And when you ignore those layers, they come back. All at once. Stronger. Clearer. Impossible to avoid. And now, he was standing right in the middle of them. The room stayed quiet long after the realization settled. Not the kind of silence that feels empty. The kind that holds weight. Final. My brother stood in the center of it, no longer trying to speak, no longer trying to fix anything with words. For the first time that night, he understood that nothing he said could shift what had already been exposed. Every angle was closed. Every excuse had failed. And every eye in the room had seen enough. I watched him carefully, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. This was not about the watch anymore. that had already been returned. This was about the pattern behind it. The assumption. The belief that he could take, use, and move on without consequence. That belief was gone now. The buyer had already stepped away, the watch secured, the transaction complete from his side. No drama. No conflict. Just a clean exit that left everything else behind. And that made the moment even heavier. Because nothing was distracting from what remained. My brother finally spoke again, but his voice was different. Lower. Slower. He said he would transfer the money back. Said he would fix everything, make it right, handle whatever needed to be handled. This time, it did not sound like confidence. It sounded like realization. I nodded once, acknowledging it, but not accepting it as a solution. Because repayment is not the same as accountability. I told him the money was already accounted for. That part was simple. What mattered now was everything attached to it. I stepped forward one last time, not to confront, but to conclude. I said this was the last time I would step in for him. That there would be no more covering, no more quiet corrections, no more second chances disguised as support. That line landed harder than anything else. Because it was not about tonight. It was about everything after it. His posture dropped slightly, the weight of that truth settling deeper than anything public could do. Because losing money is one thing. Losing access is another. The room remained still, everyone understanding that something permanent had just been decided. Not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. I turned away after that. No final argument. No raised voice. Just distance. Because the outcome was already set. The party slowly came back to life behind me, but it felt different now. Quieter. More careful. Like everyone had witnessed something they would not forget. And me. I walked out the same way I walked in. Calm. Controlled. Unshaken. The difference was what I left behind. A lesson he could not ignore. A consequence he could not avoid. And a reality he would have to face long after the night ended. Because revenge is not always about taking something back. Sometimes, it is about taking away the illusion that there are no limits. And once that illusion is gone, everything else follows. He lost the watch. He lost the moment. But more than that, he lost the belief that he could ever do it again. And that was everything. Tell me in the comments that where are you watching this story from? Also subscribe to this channel for more interesting revenge and betrayal stories.